my name's Paddy Kirk and I'm here at the 6th Leeds Zombie Film Festival. For your viewing pleasure tonight we have zombies!
A zombie film festival wouldn't be complete without a spot of Italian splatter cinema. So here we go with Cemetery Man, although this movie is also known by its original title of Dellamorte Dellamore, which translates as Of Love and Death. Yes folks, there is a love story in there. It just so happens to be within one of the most offbeat, random and downright bizarre zombie movies of all time. But don't worry about that, gorehounds, because there's still plenty of things to keep you happy. Mainly zombies and guns and sex. Oh my. Francesco is the caretaker of a local cemetery who falls in love with a woman he sees crying beside the grave of her recently deceased husband. Can't say I blame him really, considering that she's smoking hot and the only other company he keeps is his bumbling assistant, Nagi. Luckily for Francesco, this beautiful widow is instantly interested in him once he tells her that the cemetery has a nice crypt.
It's like in my dreams.
This is my dream.
Oh, I couldn't ask for anything more.
In fact, she seems to get turned on by it. Ew. Next thing you know, they're having sex on top of her husband's grave. Yep, that's right folks. This movie contains gratuitous female nudity. Oh yeah, there's zombies in this movie too. You see, the dead have a rather pesky habit of rising from the grave after the 7th day to snack on the flesh of the living. A pretty common occurrence in Italy, I'm sure. So Francesco spends a lot of his spare time killing these zombies before they descend on the rest of the town. Unfortunately for Francesco, the prospect of him getting his dick wet makes him forget that it was 7 days ago that the husband of the hot chick he is currently fucking at this very moment passed away. Hubby comes back as a zombie and bites his smoking hot wife, meaning that she dies as well, so Francesco has to shoot both of them in the head. At this point, Francesco starts to lose his grip on reality and ends up getting a visit from the fucking Grim Reaper himself, who has these words of wisdom to say.
If you don't want the dead coming back to life, why don't you just kill the living? Shoot them in the head.
What? Francesco then starts going around shooting people in the head and checking their names off in the phone book. He also starts seeing strange alternative versions of the widow he fell in love with, all of which find themselves strangely attracted to him. However, one of them has a phobia of penises, as you do, so he decides to go to the doctors and get it cut off. With a pair of fucking garden shears. Ouch. Okay, this is starting to get strange now. But this is a bloody good movie. Very funny, and that's really the whole appeal. If you're looking for quite a different zombie movie, but one that still packs in plenty of blood, gore, guns, and bare boobies, then Cemetery Man is well worth a watch. There's also a bizarre subplot involving Nagi, who falls in love with the mayor's daughter. Unfortunately, he seems to bugger up his chances with her when he accidentally pukes on her, and later she dies in an unfortunate traffic accident. However, she later comes back from the dead as a severed head, ends up killing her father, and falls in love with Nagi in return.
You threw up on me. How sweet.
You're welcome.
I think Cemetery Man was the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen. Honestly, I'm never negative about films, but that was awful. It had so many endings. Dellamorte Dellamore is the worst film I've ever seen. And I've seen some fucking awful films. I've seen Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion, and that's a fucking awful film. That was worse.
Well, for me, with Cemetery Man, it started off being packed off with, you know, plenty of zombies, plenty of guns, and plenty of tits. But then near the end, we're not enough. But by the end, it turned into an episode of The Twilight Zone. And the ending, I won't spoil it for you if you've not seen the ending, but the ending just left us all thinking, What?
Dellamorte Dellamore, loved it. Rupert Everett, so would, even if he had to bring her along with him, still would. She wasn't enough to, push a crock over, I have to say.
Not to get your willy chopped off, no.
Those nipples, biggest nipples I've ever seen, like a couple of saucers with an aspirin sat on them. Don't know what that was all about, but, I really liked it, I did. I thought it was funny as fuck, especially when he came in and said to her, "Daughter, what are you doing on the telly?" I liked it, I thought it was brilliant.
Although it may have a title that suggests it's a zombie porno movie, especially when you look at the trailer, Harold's Going Stiff is actually a very touching movie. Shot in Sheffield on a shoestring budget, this uses a mock TV documentary type format to follow an old age pensioner called Harold who was literally going stiff. At first this is put down to old age or arthritis, but it turns out that the cause of this is much sinister. Poor old Harold is actually turning into a zombie. In fact, this condition is spreading. Onset Rigor's disease causes its victims to lose their mental faculties, start behaving aggressively, and develop a walk like John Cleese due to a stiffening of the limbs. Unfortunately for Harold, this condition has spread to epidemic proportions, and now a bunch of baseball bat carrying nut jobs have taken it upon themselves to become vigilantes, which doesn't bode well for poor Harold. The bond between Harold and his home helper, Penny, is the main core of the film. They're both lonely and forgotten members of society that are just looking for love. Indeed, like Mark Price's zero-budget zombie movie, Colin, Harold's Going Stiff shows the result of the zombie epidemic from the zombie's point of view and those around him. It can be a very downbeat and dark movie at times, but it makes sure to add a little sprinkling of humour along the way, such as Penny having irritable bowel syndrome, which means that she has to keep popping off into the woods for a poo. Remember folks, medical conditions are only funny if they involve shitting. Overall, it's a very enjoyable, touching story of an unlikely couple, and a thought-provoking look at how some people in today's modern society become forgotten about. It just so happens to have zombies in it. Admittedly though, Harold is the nicest zombie you'll ever meet. You'll want to have him over for tea and biscuits. Or tea and brains.
George A. Romero's seminal zombie classic, Dawn of the Dead, was no stranger to the Leeds Zombie Film Festival. It was actually shown at the very first Leeds Zombie Film Festival, and we got the Zack Snyder 2004 remake during the second one. Yes, okay, moving on. But this time, we had Dawn of the Dead on again. But this time, it was Zombie Dawn of the Dead. This was the European version of the film.
The reason why there was a completely separate European version is because Italian film director and producer of this movie, Dario Argento, agreed to put up half the budget in exchange for distribution rights in non-English speaking countries. This then led to his own version of the film, which was dramatically recut. It's weird, but here, it feels almost like a different film. Argento didn't seem to be particularly interested in the range of genre types that Romero's version covered. This version seems to run at a much faster pace than the others, and it definitely has more emphasis on action. Although bizarrely for such an action-packed edit, Argento's Dawn actually cuts out a lot of the major action and gore sequences, including the infamous helicopter zombie. This version of the film also changes a lot of the music soundtrack, which really alters the overall tone. When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. It follows on quite nicely from Night of the Living Dead, although it isn't really required that you watch that one first. It quickly becomes apparent that there's never grown epidemic of zombies rising from the dead all over the place and walking around the cities and countrysides to find some warm human flesh to snack on. Amid all this chaos, 2 Philadelphia SWAT team members, a traffic reporter and his television executive girlfriend take refuge in a secluded shopping mall. From there, it centres around these 4 people and their attempts to live a life as normally as possible in a world plagued by the living dead. After ridding them all of its brain-dead consumers and barricading themselves in with a couple of trucks, the 4 characters then set up a homestead, surrounded by all the things that they're going to need for quite a while. From food to firearms. In this world gone mad, food, fuel and water are now in short supply. But what is really getting on the nerves of our intrepid team of 4 heroes is that they can't find any cigarettes! Ah! Hey, now's a good time as any to quit, don't you think? However, one of the SWAT team guys, Roger, then begins to slowly succumb to the wounds he suffered during a zombie attack, and eventually becomes one of the undead himself. Or is it the Grinch? It's hard to tell really. Either way, he needs to die! After giving zombie Grinch Roger a quick death by headshot, we then watch the 3 remaining characters struggling to cope with life as it now is.
The word implies an interspecies activity. These creatures cannot be considered human. They prey on humans. They do not prey on each other. That's the difference. They attack and they feed only on warm human flesh. Intelligence, seemingly little or no reasoning power, but basic skills remain are more remembered behaviors from normal life. There are reports of these creatures using tools, but even these actions are the most primitive. The use of external articles as bludgeons and so forth. I might point out to you that even animals will adopt the basic use of tools in this manner. These creatures are nothing but pure, motorized instinct. We must not be lulled by the concept that these are our family members or our friends.
They are fortunate enough to have the luxury of safety in a crumbling world, but they're unhappy. But before the cabin fever can work any permanent damage, a gang of bikers turn up to the mall and things start to get interesting again real damn quick. George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead was the first real chiller of the zombie genre. But when he made Dawn of the Dead several years later, it completely redefined the genre itself. If all other zombie movies were, say, Burt Whedon, then Dawn of the Dead was the Jimi Hendrix that blew them all away, or rather, gnawed at their bones. Nom 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 nom. The film contains some truly gripping moments. Steve's losing battle with a group of zombies in the elevator, leading to his own zombification, springs to mind. Being trapped in a small place full of people who want to eat you up can't be much fun. No, sir. However, it does have its funny moments too, believe it or not. You can never really get enough of watching zombies struggle to walk on an escalator, or taking a custard pie to the face. And those blood pressure monitors are a death trap. Some of the special makeup effects seem a little inconsistent from zombie to zombie, although some zombies do look suitably horrific. Others just look like they've had some green or grey face paint slapped on. Also, some of the blood looks a little too bright red to be considered realistic. However, a lot of the scenes where the zombies are pulling their victims apart like some sort of delicious Chinese pork dish still look just as gruesome today. The special effects were created by makeup maestro Tom Savini, who also did a lot of the stunts and even has a part of the lead of the biker gang too. The zombified version of this character also shows up in Land of the Dead, shot several years later. In fact, Savini's zombie and gore effects were so effective here, it would get him more and more work in Hollywood, including Friday the 13th. And it would actually take another 7 years for him to top his work here, when he reunited with Romero again to do Day of the Dead. But in Dawn of the Dead, we get to see heads explode, we see machetes going through a skull, a screwdriver is plunged into a zombie's brain, lots and lots of goodies. And you never once see him or Romero backing away from it.
Come back in part 2 for a little bit of this.
Oh, steady!